Who are the real radicals in the abortion debate? That is the topic of tonight's byline. Look, I make no bones about being pro-life, and I know that many in the audience don't share my views, or perhaps they share some of my feelings, but not all of them. Yet in Canada, a radical in the abortion debate is anyone that's against full-out, taxpayer-funded abortion on demand for any reason and at any time in pregnancy. Earlier this week, we brought you the story of Statistics Canada confirming that from 2000 to 2009, there were 491 babies born during late-term abortions. They were born and then simply left to die. It's a horrifying story. You would have thought that might have made a ripple in the consensus media, but no, that might make people uncomfortable. It might challenge the status quo. Today, though, the abortion issue is likely to break through due to a Conservative MP talking about his motion that seeks to condemn gendercide through sex-selective abortion. Here's the motion: that the House condemn discrimination against females occurring through sex-selective pregnancy termination. The motion comes from MP Mark Warwa of Langley, British Columbia.
Unequivocal condemnation from this Parliament will send a strong message that will help to bring an end to this form of gender discrimination in Canada.
Now, Warwa is working with a pro-choice feminist on this to push to condemn something that most people find abhorrent. This is the type of motion that should pass Parliament unanimously. I mean, who in their right mind would stand up and say they don't condemn the targeting of girls through sex-selective abortion? Well, now we have an answer for you. Thomas Mulcair and the entire NDP caucus.
We're not going to be fooled by Stephen Harper and his troops. I mean, they've been up to this for a number of years now. We know what it's really about. It's Stephen Harper and his Reform Party base trying to reopen the abortion debate. We're not going to be fooled by that. We know exactly what this is about.
How do you vote in that? Can you just explain how you'll vote?
We're going to vote against it.
Now, supporters of abortion used to like to say things like, it should be safe, legal, and rare. They used to claim that no one's really for abortion. They don't support abortion, just choice. Bullcrap. With this move, the NDP and every MP that votes against Motion 408 will be saying they have no problem with cultures that say girls are less valuable than boys, that say you can't get a son, well, kill the girl until you do. It's a modern-day version of Henry VIII, although instead of killing off wives who won't bear you a son, you kill the daughters before they're born. I'm not sure how anyone supports this, but Tom Mulcair does. Sure, he will continue to go on in interviews about his Catholic faith, and he will receive the very kind treatment in the media where they mention his faith and how it inspires him to social justice and more government spending. He'll be portrayed as devout, and then he'll stand up for killing of girls simply because they're girls. It's mind-boggling. I'm not picking just on Mulcair here, but it would take too long to name all the hypocritical and cowardly MPs who cannot say no to the abortion lobby on anything. I started by asking who the radicals in the abortion debate really are, and the answer is, of course, Mulcair and the people that will vote against this motion. Polling shows that Canadians have a complex view of abortion. They want some restrictions, but they don't want it outlawed. They don't like it being used for birth control or sex selection, and just over half say they don't like tax dollars paying for it. Those positions have been repeated in polling over several years. It leaves lots of room for debate, lots of room for policy discussions, but not for Tom Mulcair. No, Mulcair is the radical here and should never, he doesn't think it should ever be a reason to stop an abortion. And that's the byline. Joining me now for further discussion on this is Sun News columnist and commentator Lilley Gunter out of Edmonton. And Lauren, this seems like a motherhood and apple pie kind of thing. It's not a bill, it's not a motion, has no outcome other than the House of Commons saying, we don't like this. Why? Do you understand how people are going to vote against it other than just based on their own ideology?
No, and their own very radical ideology. I mean, I'm like an awful lot of Canadians, I guess. I mean, I'm kind of libertarian on this. There's no social consensus, so there can't really be a law against it because no one would obey a law that doesn't have that consensus behind it. I don't like tax dollars going to this. People shouldn't be forced to subsidize a procedure that they find abhorrent. But at the same time, too, while I find almost every abortion abhorrent, I wouldn't ban them. But this is one of those ones, like you say, it's just a slam dunk. I mean, I have very seldom known people on the other side, on the pro-abortion or the pro-choice side, who were in favor of sex selection abortion. And that's essentially what the NDP have said they're going to do. They're going to vote in favor of it because the Reform Party is rearing its head. I mean, the Reform Party hasn't existed in a decade.
Yeah.
So, this is just, there's so many boogeymen in here from the NDP, and I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to charge up their base. They're trying to scare all of the radical feminists in the country against the Conservatives, but they're already afraid of the Conservatives.
You mentioned scaring their base. There's a good chunk of the NDP base that feels like you do on this.
Absolutely.
Because it goes across party lines. There are differences between people that support different parties. But a majority of Canadians believe there should be some restrictions. A majority of Canadians that don't like tax dollars going to it. A majority of Canadians don't want it made illegal.
Well,
there's lots of room in there. But the people that Mulcair is challenging are people like Joyce Arthur and the Abortion Rights Coalition folks who actually are the only ones I've heard outside of the NDP today who've said that they will not condemn sex-selective abortion and that they defend abortion up until the 9th month. Those are the radical positions.
But I think something that you mentioned in the introduction that's very, very important for people to know here is this is not a bill to change the law in Canada. This is not an amendment to the criminal code that would make sex selection abortion illegal. This is, as you said, merely a motion by the House of Commons expressing its repulsion at or lack of support for sex selection abortion. It changes the law in no way. It
Mark Warwell was asked about that. And, why do you want to bring this in then? It won't change anything. He said, they want to change hearts and minds. They're not trying to use legislation to say you can't do this, but they want Canadians to think about it. This is a real problem, especially in lower mainland of British Columbia and some other places in Canada. It's a problem in India and China, but in those places because of large Indian and Chinese populations where they've brought over the cultural practice of favoring boys over girls, and now there is an unnatural imbalance in the number of boys being born compared to girls, especially when you get into the second pregnancy. Canadian Medical Association Journal has looked into this and said that something should be discussed about this. We should be talking about it. Here's the numbers. They said among infants of nulliparous women, the male-female ratio is about 1.05 overall. As parity increased, the ratio remained unchanged among Canadians of Canadian-born women. In contrast, the male-female ratio was significantly higher for women born in South Korea, India, than among infants born of Canadian women. So, that's a shocking stat, and that's something that I think it's okay for Parliament to jump in and say, we don't agree with this. This isn't part of our society.
I would say it would be okay for Parliament to jump in and pass an amendment to the criminal code making it illegal to have sex selection abortion. And as I said, that's not one of my issues most of the time. But this isn't even that. And already, and even still, the NDP are upset about it. So you were absolutely right when you said they're the real radicals in this. They are so radical that you cannot even have Parliament express an opinion on this without the NDP seeing some sort of hidden plot to enslave women and chain them to their stoves barefoot in the kitchen. This is head shaking that they're that radical on this.
All right, Lorne Gunter, good talking to you again, my friend. We'll chat soon.
You bet, Brian.
All right, email me your thoughts, byline@sunmedia.ca. More to come.